Dr. Julie Fauché is a board-certified family physician and has completed her coursework through the Institute for Functional Medicine. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan in biomedical engineering and completed her medical school and residency training at the Cleveland Clinic. Julie also holds a master's in nutrition and has completed the integrative medicine and residency curriculum through the University of Arizona. Julie competed in the CrossFit Games from 2010 to 2015, where she consistently finished among the top 5 women with 2 podium finishes. During this time, Julie was a full-time medical student and started her very successful fitness podcast called Pursuing Health. Her passion lies in bridging the gap between fitness and medicine to empower individuals to live healthier and more fulfilling lives. So, hello, Dr. Julie Fauché. Thanks so much for taking time to speak to our HOSA students today. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little about yourself, where you were born and raised, the different schools you did, your background in sports, etc.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be talking with all of you today. And I guess a little bit of background about me. I grew up in Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. I have a sister and had a great experience growing up, was involved in sports, mainly gymnastics, kind of became my main sport through high school. And always really loved school. I was definitely the teacher's pet growing up and always was a very good student. But I especially loved biology when I first took biology in high school and psychology. And I think that's when I first started to think about pursuing a career in medicine. And then when I went to apply for college, I actually ended up going into engineering. So I lived in Michigan. The University of Michigan was obviously a great school and was in state for me. And my dad was an engineer. And so that sort of influenced me to go into engineering originally. Although I don't think I ever saw myself working as an engineer. It wasn't something that really came naturally to me. I loved math and science. I loved problem solving. I ended up studying biomedical engineering, which for me was really interesting when it was in the context of the human body. But I definitely don't have the sort of hands-on real world talents with engineering. Like when I was younger and we'd have to put together a new piece of furniture or a toy or something, my sister would always just naturally, take it apart and know how to put it together. And I'd still be there trying to read the instructions and understand it. So definitely wasn't my natural inclination, but I had a great experience studying engineering. And I think it helped me prepare me in a lot of ways for medical school. And I also really took my time during college in making sure that medicine was the right place for me. I think that so many people go into college wanting to be pre-med or wanting to go into med school for one reason or another. I mean, there's a variety of reasons, but I really had no idea what medicine and healthcare was really like until honestly, probably partway through med school. It's just hard to know what it actually is going to be like. So I did a lot of different experiences. I tried to explore research careers, different industry careers in engineering. And then I did a lot of shadowing of different doctors and healthcare professionals, volunteering in the hospital, experiences just to try my best to understand what a career in medicine would look like. And ultimately for me, it was really the unique aspects of the physician-patient relationship that led me to med school. I loved the problem solving, the math and science, but for me, it really came down to having that personal connection with someone and the responsibility that comes when someone comes to you for the first time, telling you something that's really vulnerable, and then the responsibility you have to them to help be there for them and help them figure it out. And just the trust that they have in you, just, the first time getting to know you. And so that was really fascinating to me, and being able to have long-term relationships with people and see them through different phases of life and different health challenges was always really interesting. So I ultimately decided on medicine and ended up then going to the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine for med school. And I can talk more about what that was like too. But sort of as a side note along this path, after I was done with high school gymnastics, I wasn't doing sports in college. I didn't really know what to do with myself. I knew that I really loved working out. I loved being active. I loved being part of a team and having a coach, but didn't really know where to find that. I tried a few different clubs in college that didn't work out, like boxing club. I went and I really liked kickboxing and boxing the bags. But as soon as we had to box other people, I was like, I'm out. This isn't for me. And I would go to the rec center and do different machines and classes, but It wasn't until I learned what CrossFit was about halfway through college that it really clicked for me. And I joined my local CrossFit affiliate and was really doing it for my own health and wellness. But then that really kind of snowballed and turned into a career as a CrossFit Games athlete for several years. So that was sort of happening in parallel.
Wonderful. So, how did you learn to juggle both passions of becoming a physician, but then now this new passion in CrossFit?
That's a great question. I think it's interesting because when I first started CrossFit, I was already down the path of going to medical school. I was in the process of taking the MCAT. The following summer, I was doing an internship at the NIH and applying to med school, and I was already kind of going down that path. And so CrossFit then just surfaced as sort of this other thing that I hadn't necessarily planned on becoming a big part of my life. I thought, it would be something I would do a class a few times a week to get in shape and for my own fitness. But then all of a sudden it became this sort of way of life. And I was spending hours in the gym training for competitions became, ended up doing well at these competitions and going on to bigger ones. And so it became something that all of a sudden I was having to create a lot of time for and sacrifice a lot of other things for. And I think the way that the timing worked out, I was lucky in that my first 2 years of competing, I was still in college. And so I sort of treated it like a college sport. Like I would wake up early and I would go to the gym, and then I'd go to do my classes and do my homework. And then I would go back to the gym in the evening. And it was a great balance for me, actually. I think the first 2 years of college, I was very unbalanced because, like I said, I had that teacher's pet tendency. And going into college, it's easy to let school consume all of your time because there's just so much to learn and so much to do. And so having CrossFit really helped me create more balance. And I realized that even though I was spending a few extra hours a day in the gym, my grades were still the same, and it wasn't the end of the world that I wasn't studying as much. So that was actually a good thing for me. And then as I went to med school, it became more challenging just because I didn't know what to expect. Med school was sort of a whole different ball game. But I knew it would be possible for me to still train at a high level and compete during my first year, because the way that my school was structured, we had some flexibility in our schedule. And so I knew that was possible. And then my second year of med school, it really wasn't possible. And I had to sort of make the decision intentionally that year to step away from competing and focus on school, which was a hard decision because at that point, like, competing had become my life. And the thought of taking a year off was like the end of the world. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But that time really forced me to take a step back and ask myself some questions about, why I was doing what I was doing, why I was in medical school, why I wanted to compete. It wasn't just because I was good at these things and so I wanted to keep doing them, but I had to really dig deep and understand what my real purpose was for them and how they might impact my future and my life later on. And answering those questions was a big part of me then being able to balance them in a better way. I think it's all about, no matter what priorities you have, we all have a million things that we want to do. And it's about asking yourself, what's most important? Why is it most important? And then you make time for the things that are most important to you.
Okay. So to snowball on that, looking back at being a student, what were some of the difficult academic and life experiences you found when you first started college, when you first started medical school, but also when you first started CrossFit, more so competitively?
Oh, great question. So difficult academic and life experiences. So I think in college for me, like I mentioned, like before I started CrossFit, when I first started college, I had always just been a good student, and, it's easier to be a good student when you're in a small pool in high school. And then all of a sudden you go to a college with, tens of thousands of students, and, it's a different ball game, but I still had those tendencies. And so I did tend to become too consumed with school and studying. And not to say that I didn't have fun. Like, I had great friends. We did a lot of fun things. I went to sporting events. Like, I had a great time. But I think from my like time and energy and like worry standpoint, I spent probably too much time for me worrying about school and in like diminishing returns, which I found later, spending more time doing CrossFit, like my grades were the same. It didn't really affect the outcome. Now I know that it's easy to fall into the other spectrum of things where you get to college and all of a sudden there's so much to do outside of school that you kind of forget about it. And so everybody's kind of got to figure out where they fall on that spectrum and what the right balance is for them. And then I would say when I started CrossFit, it was hard at first to find the balance. Like I remember the summer that I was studying for the MCAT, I felt like I was really getting behind my plan to study for the MCAT, and I was really nervous about how I was going to do. And there was a competition coming up that was just a local competition my coach was having at the gym. And I remember going into his office and just crying and being like, I can't do this. Like I have to study for the MCAT. I don't know how it's going to happen. And he was just like, okay, calm down. Like, why don't you just not do this competition and go study all weekend and you'll feel better. Like you're more on track. Like I was ready to pull out of the whole year of competing. And so I think also just having people around you that are going to help you see your blind spots and help you keep that balance in check is important. And then I think probably the hardest time in my life thus far, one of the hardest times in my life thus far was my first year of med school. So I competed during the summer before my senior year of college. And then I trained all year my senior year of college. And the CrossFit Games that year fell in July, which was right after, basically a month into my first year of med school. And so leading into that, I had just had a lot of life changes. Like finishing college is a big transition, moving to a new city for the first time. I had experienced the death of two loved ones in my family, which was like the first sort of death of someone really close to me that I had experienced. And one was really unexpected, and then sort of moved and started med school, which is a big deal. And all the while I'm training for this huge competition. And I sort of let a lot of things build up and like didn't deal with them emotionally, like especially the grief with losing those family members, and was so focused on the competition and so caught up that I didn't end up doing as well in the competition as I would have liked, mostly because of my own sort of expectations about how I would do. And when I got back to school, I was really depressed. Like I just didn't enjoy training anymore. I was like crying all the time. And I just had a hard time. And I remember one specific conversation with my mom where she said, you don't have to do any of this. Like you could drop out of med school today. You could stop competing today. We're still going to love you, like whatever you do. And for me, that was a real light bulb moment because I realized that I had never stopped to ask myself why I was competing. So this is kind of what I referred to before. I knew I was in med school. You have to write a lot of essays about it, which just to get in and make sure it's the right decision. But I didn't know why I was competing. It was sort of like, well, I did well the first year. Of course, I'm going to do it again. But now all of a sudden I found myself in a situation where all I was doing was either studying or training. And it was kind of causing a lot of just like a lot of confusion and pain. And so I stepped back and answered a lot of those questions for myself. I ended up going to our school counselor and just talking about everything and working through sort of the grief from those family members and trying to understand why competing was important to me, and really coming up with almost like a personal purpose statement of why I was doing what I was doing. And as soon as I did that, training became fun again. I enjoyed going to the gym. Like I had the best season that I've ever had. And so I really there learned the importance of just asking yourself that why question, because there's a million things that you can do. And oftentimes we do things just because we're good at them, or because it's what everybody else is doing, or, it seems like a good idea or has some sort of prestige to it. But unless you really identify and ask that question for yourself, it's probably not going to be something that's sustainable or that's going to bring you a lot of joy or fulfillment.
Yeah. Okay, so time management was obviously a key to becoming a successful medical student and competitive CrossFitter. How did you learn to manage your time so efficiently? Did you have help from others? Were there resources that the school gave you? How did you get that all figured out?
That's a great question. I think for me, it was a lot of probably trial and error, and just finding things that worked for me and seeing what other people were doing and trying them out. I remember like in college, I used to always just use these index cards, and like that was how I organized everything I had to do and prioritized. I also remember in college, there was this whole conversation is going to make me sound like such a huge nerd already, but there was a course, like someone came to our school and did a course about like how to get a 4.0, or it was some title that was like really, dorky like that. But anyways, the course was really helpful because it taught a lot about how to be efficient with learning and note taking, so that you're not spending a lot of time doing things that don't actually help you learn or are not effective. And so with that, I actually learned great habits for studying, note taking, test taking, all kinds of stuff like that. And just came up with a method that really worked well for me. And what that looked like, or what that ended up looking like for me, was just for each class, like reading beforehand, taking notes on what I was reading, and then taking notes during class. And then in between, like after each class, actually going back and rewriting my notes in a way that was organized to me, and rereading them. And so that way, when when it came time to take the test, I didn't really have to study that much because I had, in a way, a very systematic way, already kind of learned that information or helped it make sense in my brain. And so that I found to be really helpful. But other time management things, I think, really just came from trial and error and figuring out what works, and really just prioritizing what was most important. I think that's something I'm constantly still working on. So just, it doesn't, you don't get it all figured out. It's a constant struggle. It's something I'm still working on in a big way now. And as your life changes, your jobs change, the demands on your time change, your schedule looks a little bit different. In a lot of ways, I think it was easier in med school and residency because your time was so structured. You didn't have a lot of extra time outside to be able to do other things. And so then when you get out into the real world, there's just a lot more freedom and options in deciding how you're going to prioritize that time. Is sort of a whole new ballgame.
Okay. Let's see here. So what advice would you give to students that want to pursue multiple passions, whether it be sports and college, or let's say acting in college or a music career in college? What would you say to them? Or would that one bit of advice be?
Yeah, I would say go for it. If it's something that you really are passionate about, absolutely go for it. And I think it's easy to, and this is maybe a mistake I made, was to not do things that you are really passionate about or that you just enjoy because you're trying to do too many things that, like, you quote unquote need to do, or like things that you need to do to build your resume to apply for med school or to apply for that job. And so doing things just purely for the sake of enjoyment is also really important, whether that's, acting or sports or anything else, or just spending time on a hobby. I think that's really, really important for all of us. Just doing one thing or a couple of things doesn't tend to create a lot of balance. So identifying what those things are, and also recognizing that there's different seasons of life. So, you may have a time where you can balance 3 or 4 interests really well, or then later in life, you may have, a job that's busier and family and kids, or, other commitments, and you might not be able to spend as much time on them as you want. But just like I said, understanding what's most important for you, what you care most about, and prioritizing those things and making time for them, I think, is really important.
Okay, so you made it through medical school, you're at the light at the end of the tunnel, and now you're actually getting to practice as a professional. What do you look forward to now that you're done with all of that?
Oh, wow. I am so excited. I think I've just been very blessed with the experiences I've had thus far in my life, to be in a position to really do things that I'm passionate about in the world, which I know not everyone has that opportunity at the age of 32. So I just feel very lucky. I'm really excited to be able to actually blend my two passions of CrossFit and medicine in a very new sort of cutting edge medical practice, where we're able to sort of go outside the healthcare system, provide really great care that we believe in, that we think will help people be as healthy as they can possibly be, in the hopes that we can actually create enough momentum and enough change that eventually we'll be able to actually change the system. So I am just super excited about that. And I think that no matter what your passions are, if you stick with them and you look for opportunities, you'll find ways either be able to continue them or to combine them to do things that really make a big impact.
Okay. Has your profession, I guess you've kind of answered this anyways, but how has the profession opened other doors that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's interesting because if you had asked me 10 years ago when I started med school, what I thought I would be doing right now, this would be the last thing on my list that I thought I would be doing. I thought probably I would be a specialist. I might be as a specialist in one specific part of the body and be an expert in that and really understand, how that worked. And I thought when I actually started med school, I thought primary care was probably the last thing I wanted to do because it was just so broad and not very interesting. But as I went through and understood the healthcare system more and some of the problems that we're facing as a society, and understanding that most of our, costs in healthcare, most of our illness, our morbidity is caused by lifestyle related illness, by chronic disease. And what I saw in CrossFit, I was in med school and I was seeing what was happening in the doctor's office. And then I was going to a CrossFit gym and seeing how much more effective that was for helping change people's lives. You go to a doctor's office in 15 minutes, you might talk to someone about diet and exercise, but then you don't see them for 6 months. And so it's just not a great place to facilitate these behavior changes that we know are so important for creating health. But in the CrossFit affiliate, because I was exposed to that, I was seeing people lose a lot of weight and come off of their medications and reverse their chronic disease and gaining confidence and having a strong community around them, and just seeing how powerful that was. It first influenced me to go into primary care because I realized, I don't want to be on the tail end of this, helping people when they're really sick in the hospital. I'd rather be on the front end and help people, change their lifestyle and be as healthy as they can possibly be. But also, I don't want to just do that in a 15-minute office visit every 6 months. I want to be able to help people, put them in an environment where they really can be supported to live the healthiest lives possible and be empowered to do that. And so that is what started sort of opening doors, as I was competing in CrossFit and meeting people in CrossFit and learning about the CrossFit community. It just started opening doors that eventually, last year led to me having a conversation with the CrossFit CEO and then meeting some other doctors who had a similar mission. And next thing you know, we're able to bring this together and create something that's really new and unique and disruptive in the healthcare industry. And I think, I'm not necessarily seeing patients every day. I'm still seeing patients, but I'm spending also a lot of my time working on other ways to bring this to fruition, which has been really rewarding for me as well.
That's amazing. So with the current climate in the healthcare system where burnout is high and staffing shortages are seen nationwide, how important is it for these students, these current HOSA students, to stay the course and keep pursuing their dreams in the medical field?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. It is, I think the stats on if you were to ask a bunch of doctors how many of them would do it over again, it's pretty depressing. Just because our system right now is so broken. But I have to say that, we kind of have a choice. Like, we can either let the system be broken and not help people. We still know that health and chronic disease is a huge problem. It's causing a lot of suffering. It's causing a huge amount of cost and burden on our society, on our economy. And so we can choose to just say the system is broken. I'm going to go, choose a different career. Or if it's something that you're really called to and feel really passionate about, then we need you in the system because we need to change it and we need things to get better. That doesn't necessarily mean like I made the decision not to work within the system per se, but to work on something that's out, that's healthcare, but that's a little bit outside, that allows me to practice in a way that is fulfilling to me and helps my patients. And I think that we're going to see more and more opportunities to do that over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think that in general, everybody's fed up with the system, and we're finding so many creative, unique solutions outside of it, but inside of it also. But I think there are enough opportunities, and it gives me so much hope and excitement to see people that are coming through med school and residency now that are passionate about this and are not going to sort of like put up with the shortcomings of the system for their whole careers. And so I think if it's something that you're passionate about and you want to be able to help solve this problem, we need you. We need all the help we can get.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking to the students. And we just really appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to do this. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And I just wish you guys all the very best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.